And welcome, everybody, to the Scenic City Sports Podcast, episode 31 on this Wednesday afternoon, and it is beautiful and hot outside. Glad to have you here with us. I want to take a second and thank all of our sponsors, folks like the Gary Thacker Insurance. I said the Gary Thacker Insurance.
You did say.
Gary Thacker Insurance, the Chattanooga Flower Market, Phil's Primetime Pizza, Choo Choo Barbecue, where Rob says,
you don't know Q until you know Choo Choo.
All these folks are the ones that make it possible for us to bring the show to you guys week in and week out.
And they got some good-looking cheesecakes from
Choo Choo.
Aunt Mo's over there.
Yeah.
Red
folks,
velvet key lime.
Barbecue place turned into a cheesecake place. And I promise you, they're crowded.
I didn't eat any, but somebody I was with picked some up today, and I was like,
Staying with a food theme, I saw something yesterday that I had not heard and had not seen yet. But CBS this morning did a story about Georgia peaches. And apparently, because of the weird weather swings the last 2 years, Georgia is going to have, or is currently having, one of the worst peach crops that the state of Georgia has ever had. Because there were early frosts the last 2 years, which killed off what would have been a lot of the early peach crop that would have gotten everything kind of hardy and off to a good start. And so some of the biggest peach farms in Georgia are really struggling because of the weather.
Well, there's a lot of peaches grown also in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
So they may have escaped that by a few degrees and getting Georgia's business.
well, I know
Florida always, the one thing about Florida, though, is they always get rain. I mean, even inland they get it because it comes in off the water dang near every day, and we don't get that in Georgia.
cheap free plug for Melon Patch Farms, Trey Deck over there in Chickamauga.
We like Trey. We don't mind.
They got some peaches from South Carolina, but they were really, really good. But I know he was talking about the other day, they had some, they're called pink lady peas, pink eye peas, whatever you want to call them, and they said that the frost and the rain and the hail in South Georgia had just destroyed a bunch of that crop, and they were fortunate enough to get probably about 25 big bags of them, because I went up there last Saturday and bought a couple pounds of them, and we cooked them. But yeah, just like I said, the hail and everything has messed with some crops down in South Georgia, I know for sure.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with Justin Bieber on this when I get my peaches out in Georgia. I'm not going to tell you what I get from California, but I get my peaches in Georgia.
Well, if you go to the country, you eat a lot of peaches.
That is true. That's what the presidents like to tell us. Yeah. Well, guys, a lot that we can talk about in the sports world. We had the NBA draft this last week. Kind of went exactly as a lot of folks expected that it would. We had
the guy from France and about whoever was left.
If you saw the video of that dude throwing out the first pitch, it looked like the Jolly Green Giant throwing a golf ball.
Well, he's 7'4".
No, I'm sorry. It is literally a headline today. Wembanyama's official height, 7 foot 3.5 inches, as said by the San Antonio Spurs. That is probably barefoot, no shoes. You throw a pair of Nikes on him, and that's probably another inch and a half, depending on the padding. Yeah, he's a big dude.
Have you seen the highlights of him shooting threes?
Yes.
The jump shot.
Have you seen the picture of him standing with all the Spurs greats? He's almost a full head taller than David Robinson.
Let's say something, guys, and we know this, and we're not forecasting it, and we're not wishing it, but so many times, guys that are that size, it is a coin toss whether they can stay healthy or not to stay out there on the court.
You're exactly right.
I mean, and be honest, there have been some that's been able to do it, but there's been plenty that haven't been able to do it.
For every, I was going to say, for every Shaquille O'Neal and Yao Ming that you get Yao Ming, you get Sam Bowie, you get
with
Greg Oden,
with feet problems.
Yeah, you get. What's the one I'm thinking of? You get Manute Bol. Even though, Manute stayed around for a while, but, Sean Bradley was another one that,
this
bad.
Is the first overall pick. The guy's got to stand out there 45 minutes and play on the court.
Kwame Brown, anyone?
You look at his highlight reel, he plays a different game than those other centers.
Well,
he doesn't play like a 7 foot.
But does he still remain healthy? That becomes
he still has to remain healthy, and he probably needs to bulk up a lot.
Those other guys were traditional centers,
but
though.
This kid can dribble, and this kid can shoot from three. It's a totally different game than some of those guys we mentioned. We just lob it in there to them, and they
let them back somebody down.
Out. Yeah,
is the all-time epic fail, and I think it's safe to say that when Odom went 1 and KD went 2, is that the all-time ultimate fail of in the NBA?
I would have picked Greg Odom number 1.
But he failed.
I would, but I would have taken him.
Stay healthy.
I mean, I think if you're going to go that route, how do you take Sam Bowie when Michael Jordan's right there at number 3? But at the same time, you're the Portland Trailblazers, and you had Clyde Drexler, so you didn't need Jordan. So you didn't, hindsight being 20/20, we can look back. I mean, all we had to do.
You tell me Trailblazers took Sam Bowie
number 2, and Jordan was number 3.
Odom.
And, yeah,
they've missed twice.
There are a lot of teams in the NBA that have missed a lot of times. Akeem was number 1 to the Houston Rockets.
Then Bowie or Jordan, that was the choice.
Go back to, and I'm trying to think I'm trying to remember the exact year of this particular draft. I want to say it was around 15, 16, or 17, somewhere in that range. The top 14 picks in the first round all turned out to be basically nothing. And like the 15th pick in that draft in the first round was Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
The top 14 had stellar names such as Nerlens Noel and
some Kentucky Wildcat.
Yeah, I mean, you had Shabazz Muhammad that was supposed to be the next great player coming out of UCLA. There were a lot of players in that draft, and the NBA is such an inexact science. Everybody, I mean, good Lord, if you listen to Chris Mannix 15 years ago, you would have thought Ricky Rubio was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, he was determined that guy was going to come to the United States, and he was going to be the next Tony Kukoc, Drazen Petrovic, all the great foreign players. He was going to be all of them.
Well, we know this in MLB and certainly in NFL, Scott, that rounds 2, 3, and 4, and 5 are going to be guys that make rosters and hang around a long time.
Yep. That's where you build your team.
But in the same token, I don't think that's the case in the NBA. It's round 1 and it's over.
Yeah,
when your whole roster is 15 players is what a full roster.
There used to be 12 rounds in the NBA draft. Yeah. Now it's down to 2.
You're a college basketball guy coming out, and if you don't fall in the first round, you've wasted your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there are guys obviously that have gone second round that have become Hall of Fame players, but
they're fewer and further in between.
Further and further in between. And if you don't go first round, it's not even guaranteed money. It's not even guaranteed you're even going to make the roster. So,
and in this modern era,
it's the toughest draft in professional sports to actually get drafted and make a team.
Man, I don't know honestly, I don't know the MLB isn't the toughest. How many, and baseball fans are patient, and baseball players are patient because we realize that very few top 5 picks in the MLB draft walk out there in year 1 and make the major league squad. Yeah. Because they're not physically and mentally ready for that 162 game absolute grind.
Yeah, you hit that wall.
Yeah, and the sad part about it is we see a lot of guys that, the bonus babies as they call them, the guys that go to AA and single A that everybody thinks has a chance. You see a lot of those guys go out there and they lose heart real quick because, hell, a guy working at Walmart makes as much or more than most of those guys in those first couple of years, and it's real easy.
Signing bonus. I think they just collectively bargained it up to $25,000 a year.
God,
it's a chore, and Scott, and what makes that big difference is that signing bonus early, to whether you can hang around and show that kind of patience.
Well, if you're that first rounder, I always think back to to Kyler. Kyler was in between rounds. He was a supplemental pick, so he was like 34, 32, something like that. And Kyler got a substantial amount because of where he was. So because of that substantial amount, Kyler could afford to stay and play in Peoria and some other places for a few years and kind of give this thing a really good try. Yeah. The problem is there's a lot of kids that come from poor hometowns. The one we live in, for instance, we could get kids from around this area. If you don't come from an affluent home, you get drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds and you don't get that ginormous signing bonus. You just get that $25-30 a year like Scott's talking about. It'd be real simple to see where a guy could go, oh my God, man, I'm out here killing myself every day for 14, 16 hours a day. I can go home and work it,
And there's so many elements. I think of Kyler Burke, and I love to see him play in high school, and I thought he was with some fortunateness, I thought he'd be in the big leagues because he had all 5 tools. Coming out of high school, some people were thinking, is he a pitcher or is he a everyday player? I saw him as an everyday player because he had everything. Why would you take and squeeze that into one position? But I think when the daggum Cubs tried to make a change in his career after 3 years, I think, in the minors, now he was make you a pitcher. That kind of takes you all the way back to square one again. And that derailed his momentum. Do you know he was the minor league player of the year in the Cubs organization in year 2 or it
was year 2, I believe it was year 2.
And now you make a decision a year later that we're going to go this direction.
It was always fun when he was in the minors because I used to every day I'd check and see how he did the night before, just because it was fun to have a local kid that you could follow. I followed him and I followed Mitchell Boggs, and there was we had about 3 of them at the time that were all
Dakota Hudson still pitching with the Cardinals.
We had 2 or 3. We got some right now that are got some out there.
I saw you the from Chattooga.
The Bossy kid is Dylan Bossy Dylan Boss is still playing.
But Amos Willingham from Chattooga High School got the call. He's going up to be a relief pitcher with Washington.
What kind of a career has Charlie Culberson managed to scrap together over the last?
He just got re-signed again.
And again, I have the privilege of telling y'all these stories because Charlie was my son's age. So I first started competing on teams that played against Charlie at the age of 7, Boynton All-Stars versus the Rome Youth League All-Stars. And then it turned into Charlie ended up over more at the East Cobb days, and we'd face him through that era too. Mm-hmm. Last time we saw him, 16-year-old Mustangs beat the 16-year-old Astros on Ooltewah High School's field in a 3-2, 4-2 ball game. Now listen, we beat them that one day. we would not have wanted to turn around and play them 6 more times. They had 50 kids over in the dugout. We're sitting over at 15.
Was Jason Hayward on that team?
Jason Hayward was on that team. Culberson was on that team.
Yeah.
And y'all were, and chances are that particular day you weren't getting number 1 or number 2 starter.
Well, I don't quite remember who they threw at us, but they had so many pitchers.
Yeah,
we threw Ryan Ellis, and then we followed it with Alex Napier, and we get a win. We get a win, and they hadn't lost a ball game. I think they said they were 40 or 50-0, and they were heading up to Ohio after us. They weren't real happy with the way that turned out. Now, we turn around and play for the finals against a team from North Carolina called North Carolina Batting Cage or something like that, and they run rule us. I mean, we honestly don't have anything left to throw at another great team. But we got that on us.
Well, that's right.
Charlie hit in the 2-hole on that team, and Hayward hit in the 4-hole on that team.
It's always fun to go back. I remember back in the early 2000s when Bradley Chambers worked for me at the golf shop. Bradley was playing baseball at LFO at the time, played for Wendell over there. And I remember one afternoon, this tell you how old this was. Bradley comes walking in the store and goes, "Hey, check this out." He's got a VHS tape in his hand. He said, "This is the finals yesterday from baseball, Parkview, and I don't remember who the other team was that they were playing." But he goes, you can see Jeff Francoeur. And I remember watching 2 at-bats. And I saw that kid hit 2 of the longest home runs I've ever seen high school kid, hit in my entire life.
And Olsen, a little bit younger than Francoeur, came out of Parkview as well. So I think both of their numbers are retired through that school. And Parkview, such a school that Scott, you can comment on this. They've been great in all sports, but really they've been.
Well, Francoeur's senior year, that group of boys won. Was it baseball, basketball, and football state championships that year?
And he turned down a scholarship.
Yeah, they won
Clemson
3 times
to go on and play baseball.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he didn't make the right decision. I didn't see him play football.
I was there looking some more. Of course, Cooper Kinney, is.
What about you? Got the other pitcher down at Heritage too?
Cole Wilcox.
Cole Wilcox, yeah.
Yeah, he's of course he's getting back from his surgery, but he's looking good. And
did he have Tommy John?
Mm-hmm. And Cooper Kinney is playing well, but I don't know if you saw it or not. The Royals had their affiliate honors for the week this past week. Tucker Bradley, from Gordon Lee,
and the Kansas City organization.
This past week in AAA Omaha, the Storm Chasers out there.
He's right there.
7 for 11 with 3 doubles, 5 walks, and 6 runs scored.
Well, and he got invited in the spring and played with the big team, and I was hoping he might make the roster, but it sounds like he's real close.
It sounds like he's really, really close. And if I keep reading stuff because his family keeps posting the stories that are out there, and the people, the beat writers and stuff are like, I just got to see if he can do this at the next level. Like they said, he doesn't do anything spectacular. He's a professional hitter. He just hits the crap out of the ball.
Well, hey, guess what? You can be a designated hitter nowadays.
They keep talking about, he doesn't do this right. He doesn't do this great. He doesn't do this great, but he does all this stuff really, really good. Look, I think he's going to be in the majors. Kansas City's not having a good year. Why not bring him up and see what he can do?
At least bring him up for the September call-up and see what he can do.
I think he will. I think you're going to see Tucker Bradley.
Look, the Braves did that. Look at how many years in a row the Braves brought up Klesko, Lopez, Tarasco. They brought all those guys up because, for one, A, they were getting to see what they could do.
Yeah.
But B, you put those guys in a major league uniform, you played them a lot down the stretch because the Braves weren't in any danger of needing wins.
Yeah.
And every team around the major leagues is going, ooh, look at that.
Well, a lot of these guys that he played with in single A and double A, a bunch of them have been called up already.
Yeah.
And I think they're just, I don't know what they're waiting on, but I think you're going to see them up there maybe even before September.
Well, what was the young man that's he would be, if he's still in the minors, he's probably getting close to changing his mind. Out of Ringo. Swung it from the left side, played right field, very fast out of the box. He was in the minors. Is he still there? Had ties
Baldwin.
Baldwin. That's right. Had ties with Gordon.
Oh, God, what's his first name?
Logan?
Logan
Baldwin.
Thank you. God.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize, people.
Oh, shoot, dude. You've known a name or two in your time.
I have not heard anything about him or from him in a while.
And let me say this about that young man.
Was he in the Giants organization? I believe he got drafted by the Giants.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
He was a kid that really, really, really escalated his game, I thought, when he got in college. And got to be that kid that looked good enough that, okay, well, we'll take a chance here. We'll see what we got. Sometimes you see that kid in high school, but sometimes it takes a moment a little bit later on, and his game really improved.
According to minorleaguebaseball.com, his status is released. He was a single A affiliate with the San Jose Giants. 817 career at-bats at 258, 12 homers, 89 RBIs, and I do know he was like one of the 2018 season, he was one of the Gold Glove winners for the minor leagues. He was one of the
fastest kids I saw out of the left-handed side of the box for high school. Everything was close.
But that's something right there.
So it doesn't look like he's playing anymore. Okay. I know Connor Groom retired.
The pitcher?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he's got 2 kids now, or 1 kid and 1 on the way, and married and stuff like that. And I guess he just,
he was a good pitcher.
Yeah, he made it all the way to AAA.
Yeah. if you go back in time and you can remember anything about some of Stump's stories, he talked about covering Jesse Crossan, in spring, and how close Jesse was sitting on the fence, so to speak, and he made it AAA, and really, if I wish Jesse was here to tell the story, but so I'm telling it the best I can remember it from Stump that that Jesse had to make that decision. Do I keep pursuing this, or do I get back? And Stump thought it was really, really close, and they probably really, really was.
I think in the modern setup of the way the minor league system works, I think several of those guys, take Jesse and Billy for instance, I think those are two guys that probably would have gotten potentially a cup of coffee in the majors because of them being hard-throwing pitchers. They wouldn't, like Jesse, for instance.
And I never saw Kenny throw.
Jesse would have made
some wonderful.
Nowadays you don't really go to AAA unless that's where they more or less put you on rehab assignments, and if you're going to be a career minor league player, because AA is where you want to be. I mean, AA that's the springboard to the majors nowadays.
Well, and that's we just saw this. The number one prospect in the Reds organization was sitting over here playing for the
Lookouts.
I didn't hear enough hype about him there, but obviously the Reds organization think a lot of it.
Well, I look at
Dylan Bice, by the way, just a week ago was activated by the AAA Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp.
Okay.
So
I look at the whole thing, and like Rob was talking a second ago about like somebody making themselves look better playing in college, and to me it would be hard to be a Major League Baseball personnel person, because how do you fault a kid that elected to go play college ball, got 3 more years of really, especially someone that goes to Mississippi State and plays for a legendary coach like that. Mm-hmm. How can you not look at that kid and go, give me the kid that's played baseball at a high level for 3 more years over the 18-year-old that's coming straight out of high school that I still don't know really what I'm getting?
I think
I get the potential aspect.
I wish we had somebody here, but I heard a couple of things said that in the back, and the theory was in the back, particularly about pitchers, Rusty, that the pros wanted to go ahead and snatch them because they didn't want 2, 3, 4 years on a coach having to win a ball game.
Yeah. I get that.
Having to win a ball game.
And I get that.
That was his main objective, winning a ball game. We want him first. I think position players, though, it's an entirely different story.
Well, it's just a crapshoot.
I really do. I think if you're playing big-time college baseball like we just got the privilege of watching on TV, I don't know how much more they would have, besides having a wood bat in their hands. Mm-hmm. Okay? Also, I heard this the other day, too, that colleges have invested a lot more funds and interest and money in going out there and getting quality pitching coaches than just leaving them all in the pro organization.
Yeah.
So that may be very much instrumental. You're talking about that ace that was pitched for LSU. Rusty, they said that the other day. I mean, the kid threw 25 pitches and 20 of them were over 100 miles an hour. They said he plays for a big league team right now.
Yeah.
He don't have to go hang out in minor leagues for any period of time.
No. He can come straight out of school.
Cole Wilcox, by the way, last month assigned to Montgomery, so he's actually playing in the Southern League right now in Double-A.
That means
I did not realize
that means he's got some eyes on him.
Yeah, I mean he's rounding the form after that injury. Looks like he's getting strikeouts and stuff like that.
And in high school, let me say this about Cole, because he would hit 91, 92, if I remember correctly. I don't remember much more than that. Maybe he did. But what I'd really noticed about that is when somebody would say that it hit 92, you'd say, I don't know if I believe that. The ball left his hand with such effortless ease, okay? And that's what gives you the resemblance. He didn't throw that hard.
And that's just natural.
But that's the natural plus
just God-given ability right there.
The kid was 6'4". Mm-hmm. He had a good frame on him. And so I saw, and I think Scott, before he got out of Georgia, he was in the high 90s.
Who, Cole?
Yeah. So
Cole was throwing before he got to Georgia, in the summer they had clocked him around 98, 99.
Okay, I didn't see that in the spring at Heritage, but the ball left his hand with great ease, and that's where I said that's when you know there's an upside to that.
And his pitches weren't flat. I mean, there's one thing throwing it 99 to 100 and throwing it flat. This pitch had movement on it too,
and he probably throws a heavy ball too.
That's the main thing. I mean, a lot of guys can now throw it 99, 100 miles an hour.
It's just what it does.
But will it have movement on the pitch?
I always remember
his does.
I always remember the Braves announcers back in the mid 90s and even later 90s when Kevin Millwood threw with the Braves, and they always described him. They said he doesn't throw that much harder than anybody else in the majors because he threw about 93, 94. But they used to say that he threw one of the heaviest pitches in the major leagues, and people were like, "What do you mean heavy pitch?" And it meant because it had his pitches had so much downward velocity, no matter what ball he's throwing, that it was hard for batters to get loft underneath it. He didn't give up a lot of home runs because they couldn't pick that ball up.
This goes back in time, and I think some pitching coach / hitting coach in general would say things different right now than were talked about 20 years ago because things have changed a little bit. But Leo Mazzoni said before he retired, he said, I remember there was 3 things it takes to make up a pitcher. One is velocity. 2 is deception, some form of deception on the mound. And 3rd is late movement. And he said if you don't have one of those 3, and he's speaking 20 years plus ago, if you don't have one of those 3, it's hard to be a major league pitcher.
Yeah.
Now then a pitching coach might say something else in retrospect. Now, Scott, you gave up on being a Braves fan 2 decades or better ago now, and you gave up on him because they couldn't hit. They had all that pitching.
They couldn't hit when they needed to hit. And management refused to get them any offensive help.
Look at how things have changed. Yeah. Those great pitchers that the Braves had back in the day, how would they love to have this line?
Oh, my God.
They'd be winning 120 games a year.
Because I'm going to tell you something, Scott, and I think we can go back in time and remember there wasn't a couple of guys in those lineups that would get in this lineup.
No.
Chipper could be in this lineup. Gonzalez, they hit on first base, could
Galarraga
could have been in. But they didn't have a lot. Even the Justices and the Gants.
I don't think Lopez could have cracked this lineup.
Even Justice and Gants would struggle.
Andrew Jones, potentially. But
this lineup hits.
Gant wouldn't have made that lineup. Justice wouldn't make.
Lofton
potentially as a leadoff hitter. Grissom.
Over what they got right now?
Oh, no. Not over Acuna.
No, not there.
Well, I wouldn't put
he did last.
I wouldn't put Acuna batting first. I'd have him batting second.
Well, and again, the point being is, now, also, playoff baseball is so different in the respect because you're not playing in slugfest games.
Mm-hmm.
They're 3-2, they're 4-3, they're 2-1. It's clutch hitting, okay? It's clutch hitting. But when you got 9 guys in the lineup and swing it, your chances of getting a clutch hit is greater than you having 3 guys in the lineup.
You go, the Braves now are 2 years. This World Series will be 2 years removed from a World Championship. Go back and you look at that lineup, and that lineup batted basically 2 separate 4s.
Yeah, they did.
Lead off second, third, fourth. Lead off second, third, fourth.
We start over.
And then you had the pitcher.
And now we don't have a pitcher to worry about.
And now you ain't got the pitcher to worry about. I mean, they batted 2 distinct foursomes just like they were leading off twice, and it worked. Now, granted, that World Series winning lineup was stacked. I mean, they made some nice acquisitions at the break. They picked up some guys on some cheaper contracts, that we all knew they weren't going to be able to afford to keep.
I'm not sure they'll do that this time around. If things stay status quo, I don't know what they need to do. They need to get a hell of an arm coming out of the bullpen that stops things, Scott. And not keep,
or they need a damn lights out starter.
We need a quality starter.
Verlander from the Mets would be nice, but and don't think he won't be on the market because the Mets have foobarred this one up like nobody's business.
I can say this: we can all appreciate an owner that is willing to spend money to win, and I feel sorry for that owner, even though he's got billions. That he spent money. Padres have done the same thing.
He'll go home and wipe his tears with $100 bills.
They've both spent money, and it hadn't worked out.
And it doesn't always. I mean, if spending money is what won championships, Daniel Snyder and the Washington Commanders / Redskins would have had 10 Super Bowls in the last 30 years.
Getting back to what we were talking about earlier about being ready to play right out of being drafted. NHL draft is not. Now, how many guys out there follow hockey? There's a 17-year-old.
Well, now some of those guys go right out there and play.
But there's a 17-year-old kid named Connor Bedard who will go to number 1 pick tonight to Chicago and will be probably in the starting lineup first game next
Of course
season.
he will.
And everybody's talking about he's already NHL ready.
Well, I mean, Lord, Sidney Crosby was out there that early. Gretzky probably could have played in the NHL when he was 16 or 17 years old.
It just seems like it happens more in hockey because they're playing at such a high level in the junior leagues and stuff like that. But Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews and now...
Well, of the big four, the only one that the first rounder doesn't show up and play is baseball.
I mean, and think about in hockey, in hockey, everybody on that roster sees a little bit of ice time just about during the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you got 3 to 4 full shifts of guys that go. I mean, that's the thing that people don't understand about hockey is the absolute athleticism that those guys exhibit in just, you think about it.
We know a roster on
there's, is it 16, 18, something like that? It's 2 goalies, and then there's usually 3 or 4 full shifts.
And about 8 forwards. I think it might be about 16.
It's 16, I believe.
But you play about 4 different lines, and
but a shift is only
a minute and a half.
A minute and a half, and I mean a minute and a half. You think, well, minute and a half. That's not a whole lot. Yeah, put your butt out there on skates for a minute and a half, going back and forth.
A minute and a half is as hard as you can go. Then you come off, and then a couple minutes later you're back on there, and you really haven't had time to catch your breath yet. Most of the big guys, the main guys, only play 25, 26 minutes out of 60.
Hey, now this is obviously totally unrelated to hockey, but it just popped into my head because I'm as ADD as the day is long, so I'm going to say it as I'm thinking of it.
Who?
Yeah, Squirrel. Had a chance this weekend. We went over and caught a Red Wolves game at the stadium. If you've not had a chance to do that, go out there and watch a game at that stadium. It's not. Don't get me wrong. I support both teams here in Chattanooga equally.
Both's a fun atmosphere.
But going out there and being able to watch that game without football field lines on the field, it is a completely different experience because that is a soccer-only stadium.
It is.
It's a smaller stadium. It doesn't seat as many, but the way it is set up and everything, there is not a bad seat in that house. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't open your damn eyes, you are liable to eat one before the night is over with.
Yeah,
because we had them flying all around us throughout the night.
What does it seat?
I bet it seats probably right now 3,000? Maybe 3,000 or so, and they're still building. They're going to add, the one side with the press box or with the luxury suites and all. They're going to add that on the other side. I mean, it's going to be a really nice. They're building what will potentially be like the Battery in Atlanta for a soccer-only stadium, and it's
2,500 seats.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a
with
nice
planned finished capacity of 55.
That's what I was. Yeah, and I mean, it's a great little setup that they've. It's a little different. I mean, you go in there and they sell craft beer, and you got little food carts, and you got, it's just a little bit. Yeah. It's a different experience, but
I give them credit because I remember when it first came out, and I'm like, this is not going to fly. We've already got a team in Chattanooga.
They were willing to put the money in there.
There's two sets of fans.
Yeah, there is.
They're both supporting these teams, and they're getting about the same number of fans.
We all like sports, man. I mean, most of us, if you give us a chance to go watch something, we're going to go watch it, and that's.
Do you think we'll ever see Red Wolves versus CFC?
Yeah, I think you need. I mean, you got to,
Who's
man.
At the higher level?
Red Wolves.
Red Wolves are at the higher level. I mean, I think number one, it's a goodwill gesture between the two teams. And I think it's about daggum time that they finally shook hands and helped one another out here and there when they can, because there's enough fans in this city that can support both programs equally, and I think that could be, a plus for everyone involved.
Behind the scenes, because I know people that got CFC.
Well, came to the Red Wolves. I was going to say. I mean, there were people on both sides. I know people personally that were involved on both. So I mean, I
think it'd be awesome. I'd love to see a home and home.
Yeah. Just an exhibition, man.
I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I
play the men's team and the women. Come out and do the men's team and the women's team. I mean, just to have some fun with it.
I certainly don't see any harm in a good soccer expedition between.
Yeah, I mean, just bring everybody out, and you'd have. I definitely think it would be good. I want to bring up something real quick. We touched on the NBA for just a second earlier, and I'm not in any way want to get into some deep philosophical NBA conversation, but Dan Patrick had a really good point on the radio the other day, and he was talking to Adam Silver, and that point was that the NBA as a whole...
That's the commissioner, for those who don't follow sport.
The NBA should just abolish positions in the NBA. Because as Dan said, the positions that were back in the day don't really exist anymore. There's no, he said, and the problem with that is when you go to pick the All-Star game, well, how many true centers are there in the NBA for you to choose a starter at center in the All-Star game?
Yeah.
And he's like, and then you take a guy like LeBron. Well, LeBron has the size and the ability to play all 5 positions, same as Magic. But how many other guys in the NBA? Hell, Kevin Durant could play all 5 positions.
And the point being at the All-Star game, somebody takes a back seat on that.
The point being, let's make sure we put the 5 best guys on each side.
For award purposes, I'm fine with that. Just throw them out there, and everybody knows kind of what they play, and if you need to switch it up, that's fine. But I'm perfectly fine with that.
But then that got into
what did he say? What did Silver say?
Well, Silver did not necessarily disagree with him, but he wasn't going to come right out. They did say that Dan had a funny suggestion. He told him that if you flopped too many times, you should have to wear like a red F on your jersey, like your scarlet letter, which I thought was pretty funny. But I did see them talking. They were talking yesterday, I believe it was, and the subject was brought up of sooner rather than later, and probably in the next 5 to 10 years, Larry Bird is probably going to fall out of the top 10 basketball players of all time.
Well, by some standards, Wilt's not in people.
Right. And that gets into the whole, we talk about it a lot, the differences in eras and the stuff like this.
Sure.
And they talked about that could be the one player that writers and stuff will fight the most for, because Dennis Rodman apparently was on some interview show the other day and said if Larry Bird played in today's NBA, he'd be playing in Japan or something. And I'm like, obviously that is Dennis Rodman knowing that by saying something stupid, he's going to get his name in the news for an entire 2 or 3 day cycle. Because I would argue that if you took half of the NBA talent in today's game and put them in the game, you put them in that mid to late 80s, early 90s era, and there's a whole bunch of them that couldn't hack it.
Well, besides Steph Curry's ability to shoot the ball from anywhere on the court,
they beat him to death.
And Larry didn't shoot the ball from half court like Steph will throw it up, but there's still not too many shooters that are any more golden than what Larry Bird's game was. And I love to hear people talk about Larry Bird that played against him. They tell the truth, and it's similar stories. They said he was the biggest trash talker out there, but he said everything that he told them he was going to do,
he did.
He would get it done.
There is a if those of you out there, free plug for Max, but if you have the Max app, there is a documentary right now on there, and it's about Larry and Magic, and it's about their relationship of when they first met each other. They first met each other playing on a high school Olympic team together.
That was a great
and Magic talking about all of his buddies going, man, that dude don't play like a white guy at all, and stuff. But they talk about...
There was a game that they got invited to, and I think I heard Larry Bird say this, that they got invited to it, and that's on the same team, but they sat on the bench while the coach played.
That's this. They were taught, like Magic tells a story. He said the starters would go out there, and the lead would go down to like 4 or 5, and he goes, and they'd put me and Larry in. He goes, and we'd stretch it back out to 25 or 30, and he goes, and they'd take us back out. But what was really cool was, I don't think a lot of people understand. Everybody sees those two, and they see the rivalry, and there was a big rivalry there, but there's a really cool part where they talk about Converse decided to film a commercial of Larry and Magic. And Larry didn't want no part of it because, number one, Larry was shy. He didn't want to be in the public eye like that. But he didn't like Magic. Didn't like him at all. And so they decide this first section of the commercial, they're going to film it in French Lick. Magic's on a little, basketball court or something. Larry drives by in his international pickup truck, and they start jawing at each other about their shoes. Well, in the meantime of this commercial being shot, Larry's mama comes to the set and invites Magic and Larry back to the house for lunch. And Arsenio Hall, former host of the Arsenio Hall show, is the one telling this story, and he said they realized then how many values and how many things in their lives was alike. And Magic even talked about how much Mrs. Bird reminded him of his mama and this and that. And Arsenio finished with, he said, that day, Larry met Irving. Not Magic. Larry met Irving. And then you got Larry going, I like Irving. Irving's a great guy, but I can't stand Magic. Like that. But,
well, and so many of the guys that came after them, just like people are showing some appreciation to Tiger Woods' meant to the golf course, the guys that's come after him.
Yeah.
They are acknowledging what those two meant to the league. Yeah. The ones that came after.
To me, for that reason alone, you can't ever take them out of the top 10.
Save the NBA.
I don't know what.
I agree.
I don't know how the players prior to that would acknowledge them in that respect, Scott. I don't know if the Bill Russells of the world would say those two saved the.
Well, if you remember, they wouldn't even show. The NBA was not on TV. Occasionally, you could get some regional network. I remember WGNX of Atlanta would show Hawks games from time to time. There was a huge drug problem going on in the NBA. Yeah. Everybody was on cocaine. They wouldn't even show the NBA finals except on tape delay because nobody cared. The ratings were in the tank. And
if it wasn't Celtics-Lakers, nobody cared. And
then all of a sudden, NCAA championship, Michigan State and Indiana State, there's Bird, there's Magic. Next thing you know, they're both in the draft together. They both go, to the two most storied franchises of all time.
Who went for the other?
Magic went number one, and Larry was number 3, I think, 2 or 3. And then, all of a sudden, then Larry wins Rookie of the Year. Mm-hmm. The Celtics win the first championship between the two of them. Or Larry gets a championship first. Then Magic got one. That's right. Magic got one first, and then Larry got one, and then it was back and forth, and they met each other 5 times in the finals or 4 times in the finals. And
Philadelphia, then Celtics again, Lakers, Celtics, Lakers.
And the amazing part about you take Bird, you take both of them. I mean, they came into the league, 1980 draft.
Yeah.
So they come in the league in 1980
or 79,
and for all intents and purposes, both of them are more or less a bygone by 91, 92. Because Magic winds up with HIV. Larry has the back injury where he spends most nights laying on the floor. Yeah. So they did what they did in a 10 to 12. I mean, they are, Magic and Larry are the Beatles of the NBA. I mean, they did all the stuff they did in a 10 to 12 year span and revolutionized it all. But they opened the door. That was the era in the NBA where all of a sudden, as a kid, Scott will remember this too, and you probably will too, Rob, we could all tell you just about who the superstar was on every team in the NBA because every other team in the NBA realized, the Lakers have Magic. Celtics have Larry. Everybody needed that one guy. You had Dr. J in Philly, and then later you had Barkley in Philly. You had Akeem. You had Drexler. You had, every team seemed to have that one or two players that put them on the map, so to speak. And the NBA started to realize, well, if we market these personalities, we market these guys instead of the game itself, these are the ones that people are going to gravitate towards. And it was, and then, I mean, let's be honest, man, give credit to Nike and give credit to Converse and all those shoe and clothing companies that realized if we tag a hold of these guys now, we're going to take this game and we're going to explode
would you make this argument?
And David Stern, too.
David Stern, yeah.
Would you make this argument in a fair way that those Celtics and those Lakers were really close on a roster standpoint?
Oh, yeah.
They were really close.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe the Lakers were a player better, but they were close. But then the Bulls come along, and Pippen plays the two man, and Michael plays the one man. But then you start to say, well, who's their third and fourth and fifth best players?
Well, early they didn't. It wasn't until Horace Grant came along until they really had a third.
I don't think their roster. They're winning. That's world championships. Their roster to me wasn't as good as throughout as Lakers and Celtics.
Lakers Celtics had to answer for each other. The Celtics had,
and they were probably building their teams around that. We got to answer what the Lakers.
And people forget how many.
And they were all together for so many years too.
Yeah. So, people forget how many good veterans that the Celtics were able to pick up and get a number of years back. Look at how many years they got out of Robert Parrish after he had a pretty good career. Mm-hmm. They got several good years out of Bill Walton after Bill Walton was damn near walking around on two bad knees by the time they got him. DJ was the same way. The Celtics were masters at finding those, but the Lakers in a lot of ways did it the other way. They had
they built through the
they did, yeah. They had Byron Scott and Michael Clark,
Kareem
and
was really the only guy they actually traded for.
The Great White Hope, Kurt Rambis.
Rambis was a solid player now, but
say what you want, he was, man.
Michael Cooper and
Michael
Thompson
Cooper,
and Byron Scott. Yep. Norm Nixon back in the day.
But their rosters were similar to each other.
They were.
They countered each other, and that's why they were such great series, because they were very similar.
And that was a no salary cap era. Those were two of the richest franchises in the NBA, and so when it came time for people to go free agent, they could get those names because people wanted to go win a championship.
Yeah.
That's why Boston winds up with a guy like Bill Walton towards the tail end of his career, because he wants one last chance to get another ring. Yeah. You had all that.
Speaking of documentaries,
go ahead.
I know this is going to totally change the subject. I finally got to see American Gladiators Part 1.
Is that good? I haven't watched it yet, and I'm looking forward to it.
Some of that
it's
too.
absolutely incredible. Parts of it are extremely sad.
I can only imagine.
But it's so entertaining.
I mean, those guys were so unprotected.
They were making $25,000 a year.
A year?
And one of them can't even bend over because he's got 7 vertebrae.
He's got 7 vertebrae that are shattered or messed up real bad. He can't hardly move his arm.
And
till to this day,
it was really it was worse. It was worse than the wrestling and how those guys got treated. Don't you think? I think it was, Scott, because it was so, and they were so into, I've got to stay out here and do this stuff, hurt or not hurt, because I'm going to be replaced.
Well,
because they had reserves back there, and all of a sudden a new one would show up, and they were like,
he's better than the guy.
Where's this guy? What's this guy doing? He was taking my spot, And
speaking of, real quick, before you're running out of time, we all are fans of wrestling, and we watch all the shows. That there's not been a season 2 yet announced for Tales from the Territory, but they're in the process of season 4 right now. Dark Side of the Ring is on, and I can't go without saying this has been the most depressing season of that show so far because of the people that they have talked about. They talked about the Graham dynasty down there in Florida. They talked about Magnum TA and his terrible car wreck. They did one, there was one this past week, 2 weeks ago was Doink the Clown. This week is the Junkyard Dog, and I watched it last night. And they told, Ted DiBiase told this in that episode, because most people don't realize that Ted DiBiase was the Junkyard Dog's best friend in the world, was the best man at his wedding. And they told that Dog, in the height of his WWE run, was bringing in somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 a week is what he was making. And Tony Atlas said that JYD was making like $30,000 a month off his action figure royalties in the 80s, and pissed every last dollar of it. As Scott had brought up earlier about the NBA, wrestling didn't escape all that stuff either. A lot of those guys that were all our heroes growing up went through some stuff that, the modern Sonny and what's his name is another one. Yeah, Sonny and Candido and Sonny. That's one of them too. And I was trying to remember all the ones this time around they've been heartbreaking.
I need to turn that in, but and sticking with wrestling.
Go ahead. I was about to go there, and I know where you're going.
I saw the greatest match I've ever seen.
Yeah, hands down.
Saturday night, and I've seen whenever it was, man. I've seen. I saw Okada against Omega, but that Will Ospreay Kenny Omega match from Forbidden Door this past weekend, and I think they went out knowing Okada Danielson was the main draw. It was the main event.
Oh yeah, and they were going to make sure they blew it out of the water.
Yeah, and I don't know if they talked about it or decided this was it, but apparently Danielson was quoted, I read the other day, he didn't want to go out there and follow that
he was
match.
Pissed.
He said, I can't follow that. And then they went out there like, you got to. Went out there, and of course
that's why Tony Khan paid the money for him.
Broken forearm, and they had to end it a little bit early, but
that's why Tony Khan.
Who got a broken forearm?
Bryan Danielson. That's why Tony Khan paid a big chunk of money for Danielson to be able to use the final countdown that night for the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to smooth things over a little bit, because they knew that the Ospreay Omega match should have been the main event. It's not even. That's one of the.
I was emotionally drained.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the 3 or 4 best matches I've ever watched in my lifetime. I mean it was incredible.
Better than the Dragon and Flair.
I was going to say this is very reminiscent of Steamboat Savage WrestleMania 2.
Yeah,
which to me, I still think is the gold standard by which all other matches are measured, because that match was at 100 miles an hour.
Well, we talked about this before. Wrestlers that were so underappreciated.
Yeah.
And Steamboat was.
Oh.
He's in that club.
Mm-hmm. Well, they this new thing that they're doing now, WWE's in the process of trying to put together a Hall of Fame, like a brick-and-mortar Hall of Fame that you can go to, just like you would baseball, football, and all that. And if you got A&E, you can watch these shows sometimes on Sunday nights. They do them occasionally, and it's like hidden treasure.
And I'm sure it's going to be up there in that.
Well, there's already a pro wrestling
Hall of Fame. So
Wichita Falls, Texas.
So they send out superstars, and they got a couple of pickers. Lita goes out with them. Mick Foley goes out with them. Booker T. They try to help them find memorabilia from their career.
Seen that, yeah.
So a week or so ago, I actually caught myself tearing up a little bit watching it, because one of my all-time favorites has always been Rowdy Roddy Piper. Mm-hmm. And they talked about the fact that there just was not a lot of Piper merch out there, because he didn't necessarily change a lot. He wore the same kilt for years and years and years. He wore that white T-shirt, the Hot Rod T-shirt. He had maybe 2 or 3 leather jackets throughout his entire career. That's all he ever wore. There wasn't like a guy like Savage that goes out there, or Flair that had 50 different robes throughout his career. So they go all over the place trying to find all this different stuff, and it turns out they wind up calling and getting to go to the house of Tegan Piper, which is Roddy's daughter, who is training as we speak, and actually made her debut like a week or so ago in professional wrestling. She comes toting out like 5 Rubbermaid containers of just stuff. And she didn't give it to him. She didn't sell it to him. It was on loan so that the fans could see it. But she loaned them one of his most famous leather jackets, the one that he made his debut in WCW when he came out and challenged Hogan. She loaned him that jacket. They got the plaid boxing trunks that he wore against Mr. T in WrestleMania 2. But one of the coolest things that she let them borrow was his first and main set of bagpipes that he ever had, and the ones that he played anytime he did interview shows or anything like that. Those are the ones that he would take along with him to play. And it was hard to watch. I mean, and she talked about it a lot, and and they talked about how, we all don't realize a lot of these guys, because we look at them and we think they're bigger than life, and we don't realize how young they were. Some of them when they passed, or when they, like Magnum TA, when I watched the one on him a couple of weeks ago, Magnum TA was like 20-something years old when that car wreck happened. And, I mean, like Jake the Snake talked about it. He said, the NWA, Crockett Promotions, they had the next 2.5 years of programming was already laid out on the shoulders of Magnum TA. He was going to be the next world champion. They had already, he was going to chase the title all the way through like 1984 and 85 and probably win it in 86 and carry it for a couple of years, and then, they would groom someone else to go. When you look back on it and you think at the time, that Crockett Promotion NWA, that was Tully and Arn, that was the Four Horsemen, the Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors. I mean, it was a who's who. Yeah, Dusty Rhodes. If Magnum doesn't get hurt and they're not forced to scrap any of those plans and they stayed where they were going to stay, they would have been right there, neck and neck, probably with WWF, making their way into the newer era. I mean,
so they lose their ace.
Yep.
And then they have to kind of start.
They promoted Nikita is what that was the decision. Like Dusty, Dusty was quoted. Yeah, I know exactly. Basically saying, that we had to have.
We got to find. Somebody.
We had to find somebody. We couldn't replace Magnum. We had to find something different than Magnum and try and work with it, because he's like Jim Cornette has been in all these episodes, and I didn't realize, man, I'd love to just sit with that dude for like a day. He's a walking encyclopedia. And he was talking about it, and he said, he goes, you had your number one heel in Ric Flair, and you had your number one face at the time in Dusty Rhodes. He said, but you've always got to have, he said, your guy that's your box office draw. And he said, and that was Magnum TA. He said he had the movie star looks. He had the physique. He said he had the ability. He said that dude could have been quite possibly one of the greatest of all time.
And then Sting came along at the perfect time.
Yeah.
87, 88.
But the problem is, by that point, they were already so, where they were letting stuff happen. People were jumping ship for the money to Stanford.
They tried to get too big.
Too fast.
They tried to expand into markets that
top five celebrities that would make good WWE heels.
Kevin Hart.
He make a good heel?
I could see that.
Because he's got that little, just kind of, he's like the little Banny Rooster, he just get under your skin, and, when
I say celebrities / other sports.
Oh, well, if you go...
I saw this list. It had some of, who was on it?
Who?
Belichick.
Oh, I could see that. He'd be a good heel manager.
You know who else was
Who's
on
that?
Aaron Rodgers.
Rodgers would be... I
can think of a lot of. We can make that list go for a long way.
I think Bryce Harper.
Oh yeah, he's not liked.
I think what's his name, the soccer player, Zidane.
Oh, Zidane?
Zidane, yeah, God, people just hate him. I saw the video where he went in that one stadium. He was like, "I'm just giving you all the chance to see me, and I know this makes your day."
It's what's his name? Abramovich?
Yeah,
that guy would be awesome at it.
I would say
Belichick could make a great WWE manager, but he's got to get better on the mic than what he is. Because he don't say enough.
I'll tell you,
it's a comparable sport, but Conor McGregor could be a great.
Oh yeah,
great heel.
Let me tell you,
he already is.
Off the top of my head, the greatest heel tag team if you had a crossover. I'd put Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe.
Oh my God, that would be great.
Who would be their manager?
Oh,
Yvonne Lindell. There's three.
Let him be the mouthpiece. Bjorn Borg.
Or loved them, or just hate. No, Bjorn Borg was a babyface, man.
God, man.
Borg was a babyface, but Connors and McEnroe together.
Back in the day, if you could have put Mickey and Whitey and Billy all together as a six man.
I just wanted to see one time where that referee up there that kept his mouth shut the whole time just had enough.
Oh yeah,
got down and took that racket for McEnroe.
But over the years,
McEnroe thought he was safe because that guy ain't gonna say nothing.
Over the years, and we'll let it go on this. But over the years, some of the celebrities that have been brought in A few of them have been decent. To me, I think Mr. T might be the gold standard by which all celebrities are measured, because T actually was in good enough shape and trained his behind off to get in there and kind of be part of it, and he looked legitimate. I think Kevin Green did a good job of looking legitimate.
Karl Malone.
He tried. He just was so big.
But he had the look.
He was very awkward. But Malone had a chance to be.
Well, so Rodman too.
Rodman did too. I mean, but they were so tall and skinny that it kind of.
Became a good one.
McMichael turned out to be decent. You know, I remember.
Well, he became a horseman.
Yeah.
I tried to help him on that.
I was trying to. I mean, there's been over the years there. I mean, I think Gronk could have potentially been a good professional wrestler. I just don't think you can keep Gronk serious enough in anything. I'll tell you somebody who I think would make a great professional wrestler, and you could probably make him a heel or a babyface, and that is Jason Kelce. That big-ass beard and that bushy hair and everything, man, you dress him up like some kind of Viking or something, he just comes out there like Nord the Barbarian. I mean, Kelce could be a good one.
Gimmick.
Well, but you know, I mean, you know, Kelce could be a good one.
Winding down Super Bowl era.
Yeah.
The winningest franchise since the Super Bowl era, winning percentage, and who's dead last?
I'm going to say San Francisco is close to the top.
Dallas is pretty close to the top too.
Dallas is one.
Yeah, I was going to say they were number one.
They're 597 winning percentage.
Yeah. But they're not going to be there for long because New England now, isn't it? It's New England now. Is it Steelers?
Yeah.
Now who's dead last?
Cleveland?
Falcons.
Or Detroit?
Tampa.
Huh.
Tampa's dead last on the winning percentage.
Huh.
16 of the franchises are better than 500. The rest of them are under. And Atlanta and Titans both.
Well, I mean, there's 32 teams in the league, so yeah.
Atlanta and the Falcons both are under.
Atlanta and the Falcons.
I mean, Atlanta and Titans. Titans are too. Titans have a slightly better percentage over the Falcons.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for us this Wednesday afternoon. We appreciate you guys. If you tuned in live with us, we're glad to have you. If you're listening to us on delay, we hope you enjoyed the show. You guys are the reason that it's all possible. Look forward to some stuff coming up as football season is starting to work out. Hey, listen, I'm going to put an open call out there. If you got a kid that is at a particular school in this town, or you go to a particular school's game every Friday night, reach out to us and get in touch. I'd love to get you to just stand there once in a blue moon and take me a few highlights every Friday night and send them to us so that we can have representation for everybody. We want to do everything that we can to get as many kids on camera and everything this year as we can, so we're going to start kind of hitting that pretty hard. So we want to thank everybody that's right.
707 about to be over for dead period. You just get started, then you got the dead period.
But then they're coming back.
So
second week of July, we'll be back full bore.
So for Scott and Rob, this is Rusty. We want to thank Gary Thacker Insurance, Choo Choo Barbecue, the Gary Thacker Insurance, the Payne Mortgage Team, Chattanooga Flower Market, Choo Choo Barbecue, Phil's Primetime Pizza, and all the all-star sponsors that make it possible for us to bring the show to you. We'll catch you guys next week.